We're going to get started. Good morning. I'm Bill Hansen with the Coalition. We have, hot off the presses, excuse me, a printed press release which we'll share with everybody. And in a very quick second, we're going to hear from each of the 5 co-chairs of the Coalition for the Future of Detroit School Children, who will make brief opening remarks. We'll have hopefully time for a quick couple of comments from supporters in the room. I want to let people know that this press conference is being taped. It'll be available to stream later today on the Coalition's website. And then we'll of course, take questions from members of the working media. And we ask that when we do the question part, if you'd state your name and media affiliation, please. Ashley, are we ready? Okay, so we're going to start with Reverend Wendell Anthony, co-chair of the Coalition, NAACP, and the main man in this building.
Thanks, Bill. Let me say good morning to everybody. Good morning. And certainly want to welcome you all here. I'm a co-chair of the Coalition for the Future Detroit School Children, also President of Detroit NAACP. So this statement is reflective of the Coalition as a co-chair, but also where we are as an organization, the NAACP. It is indeed unfortunate that we find ourselves once again at the threshold of deciding whether or not we will work to sustain the future of our children. The question before us is one of preserving the posterity of our state and nation, or whether or not we will allow them to continue to twist in the winds of uncertainty and insecurity. Thomas Jefferson once said that the care of human life and happiness and not their destruction is the first and only object of good government. Today, we call on our state government to be good, to fulfill its constitutional duty and to place people over profit and children over ideology. Many of us have worked exceedingly hard to try and bring resolutions to critical issues confronting the Detroit Public Schools. Individuals on both sides of the aisle have both compromised and stood for what they believe is the proper action to be taken on this issue. And for that, we are grateful to both those Republicans as well as Democrats who've stood strong and firm for Detroit and for Michigan schools. It is unfortunate that our children are being used as pawns in a political game that is not of their own making. The citizens of Detroit, which by the way is a part of the state of Michigan, are entitled to the same educational benefits, the same local governance rights, appropriate financial fund support, as well as the same requirements for certified professional teachers like every other school district. Why must Detroit continue to be the place for experimentation, humiliation, disrespect, and neglect by some who are in positions to do much better? It is said that some are angry at Detroit teachers because they were not in the classroom for 2 days demonstrating their concerns over work with no pay. How many legislators are willing to work with no pay? How many legislators have contributed a portion of their salaries to the Michigan legislature to provide budgetary or operational aid to continue their legislative sessions? How many legislators have taken pay cuts to their health care, their pensions, as well as operating with little or no supplies in their legislative offices and yet show up for work every day to do their jobs? Detroit is not asking for anything special. Detroit is simply requesting what it is due. Detroiters are due appropriate funds to operate a school district previously under state control for the past 16 years. Detroit is due the same type of governing structure as every other school district with its own local and empowered school board. Detroit is due classrooms that have adequate supplies, classrooms that are not overcrowded, and classrooms that can promote the dignity and respect for our state and our nation. The city of Detroit knows this very well. We implore the Michigan legislature to understand that there is an emergency that does not require an emergency manager, yet it does require some emergency action. The action, of course, is to keep Senate Bills 710 and 711 in their original form. Why is there so much resentment, disrespect, and total disregard for the people in this city of Detroit? Is this about race? Is this about class? Detroit as a city is one of the largest contributors of state taxes, pays the highest insurance rates in the nation, has some of the highest unemployment in the country, and yet continues to have a spirit reflecting hope and possibilities for the future. No, we're not looking backwards. we're looking forward as to how we get out of here. We're looking forward to what must be done and move us away right now. We call upon the Senate to stand firm with its original version of Senate Bill 710 and 711. And we call upon the governor to veto any bills that do not guarantee the appropriate financing for Detroit schools, a locally elected and empowered school board, a Detroit Election Commission to authorize opening and closing of schools, and respect the rights of labor to do its job. We will either pay in manageable finances on the front end by supporting education and the future of our children, or we will pay dearly on the back end, leading to the destruction and the incarceration for our children. The choice is ours, and the choice must be now.
So the next co-chair to speak to you is Angela Reyes from the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation. Angie?
Thank you, Bill. I'm extremely disappointed that the House chose to pass a set of bills in the middle of the night that continue to hurt our children in Detroit. I'm very disappointed that the House chose not to use a bipartisan approach like the Senate did to come up with a really good set of bills that would further education in Detroit. And I'm calling on the governor to lead both the House and the Senate to come up with a better set of bills that will really create reform for education for our children in Detroit, or else to veto those bills. I have to say, I am not a young woman. I have been fighting for children and education in the city of Detroit for 4 decades now. I am exhausted, I am frustrated, I am emotional, I am angry, but I am not giving up. This cannot be the legacy that we leave our children in Detroit. I will not sit by and watch future generations come and ask us, how did we let this happen to our children? We cannot leave this be. Today is Cinco de Mayo. It is not a holiday to celebrate drinking tequila. It is a holiday that commemorates the fact that a small group of brave soldiers overcame in a battle a much more powerful group, much more better resourced group, and won and sent them back where they came from. Because we can do that too here. We can win. I don't care if we have less money. I don't care if people think that we're not as powerful. I think they have underestimated the power of the people of Detroit and the people of Michigan. So since it is Cinco de Mayo, I'm going to take the liberty of quoting one of my heroes, Emiliano Zapata, that I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Que viva Detroit!
Thank you, Angie. The next co-chair to come and talk to you for a minute is Tanya Allen, President and CEO of the Skillman Foundation.
Good morning. I want to agree with the sentiments that Angie said. This is just one battle down. This is not the war. We have not lost, nor will we stop fighting. I would just say, I want to echo my disappointment that Reverend Anthony and both Angie have made regarding what's going on in Lansing. I think that what's happening in Lansing is basically an attack on these things. It's an attack on children, it's an attack on teachers, it's an attack on Detroit, and most importantly, it's an attack on public education. So let me just say a couple things about that. When it comes to children, they have said to us that they are going to put forth academic reforms that would help children. There's nothing in these packages, nothing in their discussion that suggests that they want to improve any condition for children. Children will continue to return to the same schools with the same broken buildings and poor repairs. We don't have an academic piece to this. This is more academic deform than it is reform. The second thing I want to say is that when we talk about our teachers, teachers are the most privileged, they are our servants of our community. Why would you attack teachers? There is no reason at all for us to attack teachers. Teachers are the foundation of our society, and here we are undermining them. We're basically saying that Detroit children don't deserve highly qualified professional staff in their classroom, and that is ridiculous. The next thing is Detroit. The people that have advanced these bills have advanced them with an anti-Detroit notion. I don't understand how you choose to support Detroit, especially with all of the things that are advancing in our city, and then you take the most important thing that is crucial to our future, to the prosperity of our city, and purposely try to destroy it. Not only are you purposely trying to destroy it, but you're going to pay $500 million to do so. And then the last thing I would say is this, and that's to all of those who are not in Detroit and who are sitting apathetically and who believe that this is just about Detroit. No, this is about a small ideological group of people who have decided that public education in Michigan no longer matters and no longer counts, and they're doing anything and everything they can to undermine it. And in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to fight in Detroit, but we need everybody in this region and everybody in our state to fight with us, because this is no longer acceptable for us to treat our children as if they're third-class citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Next up is David Hecker, president of the Michigan AFT.
Thank you. Our community has come together over the last 18 months and designed a plan to enhance public education in Detroit, a plan reflected to a strong degree by the Senate bills passed last month with bipartisan support. Well, the exact opposite happened earlier this morning when Speaker Cotter at 4:30 in the morning rammed through legislation that is anti-student, anti-public school, anti-teacher. It includes absolutely nothing to improve education. In fact, the exact opposite. Non-certified teachers, privatized teachers, taking away teacher voice, making all teachers and staff reapply for their jobs. So let me ask you, not you, let me ask the House legislators who voted for this package. There's already a 180-person teacher shortage in Detroit. More will retire. With legislation like this, more will leave. How are you going to retain and attract the best and the brightest when you treat teachers with such disrespect? It is apparent that this legislation is in retaliation for teachers on Monday and Tuesday standing up for their right to be paid for the work that they do. And when my 3 kids were in school, I didn't want them taught by a teacher who, when that teacher is attacked, cowers in the corner. I didn't want my kids to get that lesson. I wanted my kids taught by a teacher who taught the lesson of you have rights. You stand up for your rights. You speak for what is right. You speak the truth, and you fight for the truth. You know, I think we all know that Detroit and Flint don't just happen. I'll leave that there. As was said, the Senate passed bills last month, not perfect, but go a long way to enhancing public education in Detroit. Bipartisan support. We call on Governor Snyder to bring people together to make those Senate bills the law of the state of Michigan, and in addition to that, to say that if those House bills ever come close to his desk, he will veto them. This is our time. Let's make it happen.
Thank you, David. Before we call on our last co-chair, John Ricolta, to make some brief comments, I just wanted to acknowledge all the young people who are here in the back with their signs, and also all the steering committee members and coalition supporters in the room. Thank you. Our last speaker is coalition co-chair John Ricolta Jr., who is the CEO of Walbridge.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to express my views. There's a misconception that Detroit and her citizens are responsible for the massive debt caused by 7 years of deficit spending. And this is another bailout for Detroit. The state, through its emergency manager, has made every decision pertaining to the district. The emergency manager signed all those orders for spending, caused the state to guarantee the $550 million in debt, controlled the budget process, and the daily management of the district. Not a single Detroiter was consulted, had a part or a role in the decision-making for the past 7 years. The House bill simply doesn't go far enough to solve this problem. The Senate bill does. As David Hecker said, the DPS is currently 180 teachers short. Some schools do not have math teachers or science teachers. And this bill is going to do nothing to prevent these teachers from leaving, let alone fill all those 180 positions that are currently vacant. This bill continues state control for another 18 months. Hasn't 7 years of failure been enough? Finally, the House doesn't want to live up to the mess that the state caused and owns. They continue to put out misinformation that this is a Detroit bailout. This is a state of Michigan bailout. They caused it, they own it, and they need to fix it.
Thank you, John. Before we take media questions, this coalition has held together remarkably strongly over the past 18 months, and the reason I think it has is because the coalition members are united for Detroit school children and Detroit school families, and a steering committee member who's played an important role and is an important voice in the coalition, Arlisa Hurd, is here. Arlisa, do you want to make just a brief comment? Come on up.
Good morning. This is a good day in spite of. However, because I am hopeful and I am faithful, I'm confident, but I'm also angry. I just have this note to the legislature. How dare you do that to Judah? How dare you make his education less important by allowing less qualified teachers to enter the classroom and attempt to teach him? How dare you do that to Judah? You have essentially made a lie out of his teachers who are now teaching his fourth grade class that to change things you must vote and have a voice in democracy, while at the same time his own mother's vote for an elected school board has been nullified. How dare you do that to Judah by telling him that the city that he lives, sleeps, and wakes up in every day is not worth investing in to ensure quality schools in his neighborhood. I have taken this so very personal. How dare you do that to Judah? Judah is my son, my fourth grader, that I have invested in, and I absolutely refuse to allow that to just be dropped down the tubes. How dare you do that to the Judahs of this city? I will not give up. Like many of the co-chairs have said today, I will not give up. This is about our children, and my child, Judah, is worth it.
Thank you, Arlisa. I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that, but I'm glad I did. Okay, this is the time where we open up to questions from the media. I ask simply that you wait for the microphone, the handhelds, which our friends will pass out. And would you state your name and media affiliation, please? Guy?
I don't need a microphone. Guy Gordon, Local 4 News. This is for John Ricolta. You're a businessman. You've studied the numbers in this, John. And I know you've fly-specced it. You had House Republicans last night saying this $30 million transition allotment was more than enough to get this new district started. Do you agree with that? And if not, why not?
I do not agree with it. It is fundamentally inadequate. First of all, the $515 million pays only for the debt as it is assumed to be through June 30th of this year. What it doesn't include is the transition costs that you've just said in order to collapse the old district and reinvigorate or legally set up the new district. There's an enormous amount of legal work, consulting work, and study that needs to be done. This is equivalent to a bankruptcy. It's a structured bankruptcy. And what's happening is that we're closing down one district and opening up another, and there's an enormous amount of work to do on that. That alone can cost in the tens of millions of dollars, as witnessed by how much it costs to do this for Detroit. But what also has to happen is there's been no maintenance done on many of the buildings for a good long period of time. The district right now, I believe, is estimating that we need somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million to fix the roofs, the floors, the windows, the heating systems, the boilers, and the list goes on and on and on so these kids can have a decent place in which to study. Secondly, there's been no security done in terms of capital improvements for years. That's another $10 million. Thirdly, we will not be able to return the district to a balanced budget for a minimum of 2 years. It is estimated that the deficit going forward, in spite of all the good work, will be another $50 million a year well through 2018. If you add all of these things up plus another laundry list of things, you are well over $200 million. And if you don't get the $200 million, the question becomes, how do you run the district? And I can only say this, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the coalition. I am thankful that they're not giving the district back to us to run for another year, because there's no way that a locally elected school board could deal with these massive issues. The state should keep it, and 1 year from now, we're all going to be back here and we're going to find we're in another couple $100 million deficit.
Follow-up, Guy?
I think John pretty much covered.
As he usually does. Other questions?
Bill, but if I may,
Yeah,
I
go
just
ahead.
would, the one other thing I would say is I just think that there's a ton of arrogance that's happening in Lansing. We have a bankruptcy judge who has gone over these numbers, has investigated and interrogated the numbers and knows exactly what needs to happen. Yet the legislature decided that they could figure this out without any expertise, without any local input into what the solution should be, and that is shameful.
And it is interesting, Guy, on that point, that the same judge, Stephen Rhodes, who oversaw the bankruptcy of Detroit and was heralded for the great outstanding job that he did by the same legislatures, and who was lifted up because of his accuracy and efficiency and the fact that he knows this stuff, is now being poo-pooed because he is now saying that in his analysis, after having evaluated and talked to all the, this is what Detroit needs. It's the same gentleman a few months ago who y'all was lifting up for the bankruptcy of the city. Now he's telling you what needs to happen to prevent that from happening at the Detroit public school system. Well, if it's good enough for the judge over the city to be Harold, it's good enough for the judge over the school district to be Harold. This is unfortunate, Guy, and I know you who have been a reporter in this town for a long time, this is a very critical issue. And I just want to say this, Detroit cannot come back like it should without the educational system coming back like it must. And so even a lot of us sitting here have not agreed with the packages that came out of the Senate bills 17 and 11, but right now they were the best thing on the table. Even the governor supported that. The mayor supported that. The coalition supported that. Labor supported that. And now to have these fellas in the dark of night, in the wee hours of the morning, to turn the lights off on the program is just reprehensible. And I hope that people are paying attention, because people can only take so much. When you look at what's happening in Detroit, the water issue, the Flint, I'm talking about the water shutoff issue, the Flint issue, the lack of employment issue, we're coming up on the summertime. At some point, that pot is going to boil over. And I hope and I pray that as you see these young people here, and there are others in the community, what about the seniors who are getting ready to graduate, who are supposed to be graduating? And if the teachers decide to walk again, and who can blame them, if they decide to walk again, that puts in jeopardy the seniors and the rest of the school year. So I hope that the governor will do the right thing, and I hope that somehow the legislative body will have an epiphany and recognize that this is not the way to fix the Detroit public school system.
Right here in front.
Hi, my name is Erin Einhorn. I'm with Chalkbeat Detroit. Several of you called for a veto if the bills don't change substantially before they get to the governor. I'm wondering if you can talk us through what a veto actually looks like. So if this bill if nothing passes, because you're saying that's better than what these bills would do. So what actually would happen if in fact the bills are vetoed and if nothing passes?
So obviously a veto would dry up the funding. There wouldn't be any funding going forward. Then the state would have to make the next step. It either they have to have a special appropriation to be able to fund schools for next year, or admit that the legislature is dysfunctional and declare bankruptcy. And I believe that if these aren't passed, that bankruptcy is the next best option. The problem with bankruptcy is you're going to go into federal court and you lose all control from that point forward. A federal judge will then make the determinations. And if that's the case, at this point in time, seeing what the House passed, I think that's a better option. I think a federal judge will go much deeper than just erasing 7 years worth of deficits and doing nothing looking forward, because that's all this bill does.
Hi, I'm Ann Zaniewski from the Detroit Free Press, and I just wondered if anyone up here has had a conversation with the governor this morning, and if so, if you could describe what was said.
I don't think so. Any other questions, Ann? Okay. Yes, behind you, Ashley.
Good morning. My name is Maria Valdivia. I have my kids in DPS school. I was in Lansing last week, and my question is, why are you attacking the teachers? Why? The legislators doesn't have the kids. I'm so worried about my kids. What is going on with the kids? Not with my kids, all the kids. I'm so worried, and I don't understand a lot what is going on, but I'm so worried about the future of the schools. Thank you.
So thank you for that. We're all worried, and I think one of the things I would just say is that what is happening in Lansing is I think they're essentially trying to send back to us a broken school district. Now, they might have taken it because we were slightly broke, but now they have broken it and put so much debt into our hands, and they want to return it to us that way. And you know, we're not going to receive that. We're not going to receive a broken district for our children. They're going to have to fix this. They have to fix this, and they are going to have to stop pointing fingers at the victims in this. They're pointing fingers at teachers, they're pointing fingers at children, they're pointing fingers at Detroiters and saying it is your fault that our state emergency manager has run a deficit in this district, has basically cleared out all of the administrative staff within the district, that has basically lost teacher after teacher every year. And it is their fault that we cannot even attract highly qualified teachers. It's also their fault that teachers are running away from, students and parents are running away from this district like they're education refugees. It is their fault, and they have to fix this.
Guy.
Mr. David Decker, how would you address or how would you respond to people who would say that some of the language in this bill is in direct response to the sick outs, and it's something that this was, even some of your allies have said, that this was a political miscalculation and that the timing could not have been worse?
I, again, would like to ask those people if they ever worked without pay, if they ever lent their employer $9,000, if they work in the kind of conditions that teachers in Detroit work in the buildings that they're in, and the class size through the roof. Many times those roofs have holes in them. And again, what I said when I spoke, Guy, do we want our children taught by people who believe that when you're directly attacked, you just cower in the corner? Is that the lesson we want Judah and our other students to have? Or do we want our students to get the lesson that you stand up for your rights? And when the boss says, I can't guarantee I could pay you, it's not the American way.
Respectfully, I think you're right. I think in this community there's an understanding of that. In West Michigan and elsewhere, where they're going to be asked to pay the tab for this, it's viewed quite quickly. You're seeing it through a different lens. So I understand what you're saying. The other element of this is the collective bargaining change that would take place within the House bills. Just for people at home, explain why that is so onerous.
Well, in the House bills, the Detroit Community School District is not what, and I'm sorry to use a legal term here, but are not what they call, is not a successor employer. So in the Senate bills, the Detroit Community School District is a successor employer, which means the employees, Judah's teacher, the other teachers, the staff, go from DPS to the Detroit Community School District. The unions, the democratically elected unions, go over. The collective bargaining agreements go over. Teachers have their voice. Teachers have their rights. Under the House bills, teachers would have to reapply, and staff would have to reapply for their jobs. The unions and the collective bargaining agreements would not be there. Wages and working conditions would just be unilaterally set. That is not how you retain and attract the best and the brightest to teach our kids.
Question there.
Good afternoon. I'm Monique Baker McCormick, and I'm a parent of a student at Cass. And I am really concerned about the lack of certified teachers in the district. It's as if our children are third-class citizens, and it's not important to have the best and the brightest. And for me, it is a lesson for our students to see our teachers fighting back and standing up, because they all deserve better.
Thank you.
I mean, it's been said before, if I can.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's been said before, but just want to repeat that if the House bills become law and you could have non-certified teachers out of, including charters, probably 750 school districts in this state, the school district that more than any other is overwhelmingly students of color, is the only school district where you could have unqualified teachers come in.
And I would also say this, going back to part of the issue that Guy raised about folk on the western part of the state. That's why we're having a press conference. We're reaching out to people all over the state. We want to work with the people on the western part of the state, because if this kind of bill and program can come to Detroit, it can come to your community as well. If we become victims of district with uncertified teachers and they find that that can work in Detroit, it can come to Grand Rapids and go to Traverse City. And let me just say this, it's in the interest of the whole state to fix this, because if we don't fix it on this end, Guy, we're going to fix it on the back end. And well, a lot of things are going on now. A lot of things went on. We're reaching out to legislators who are from various districts, and you can help us by letting them know through WDIV4 that the bridge is open and we want to come across, and we want them to come across. I see. Well, maybe this will get y'all that far. But let me just say, I know y'all got a lot of power capabilities. We're working with corporate leaders who have reach all over this state. The Detroit News, the Detroit Free Press, and all those media outlets, and this is being picked up by a lot of media outlets. We want that message to be heard. But I think that when you talk to people for the most part are reasonable. When you say, do you want an uncertified teacher teaching your child? Most people will say, absolutely not. When you ask folk, do you want somebody else telling you how to run your school district other than the people in your community? Most people would say, no, I do not. When you ask people, do you want adequate funding for your school districts to perpetuate and to educate their children, most people say, yes, we do. It's the same thing that the charters want. It's no difference. So I'm simply saying that I think the appeal is being made. If we don't fix it on this end, John is absolutely correct. If it goes to bankruptcy, it's going to be deeper and much broader than what it is right now. And we don't want our city to explode by virtue of the anger and the frustration and the resentment that this kind of legislation can create. So we call upon the governor to do the right thing if it gets to him and to veto it.
I have reached out to many on the west side of the state, and by and large, their view is supportive, sympathetic, and realize that how goes Detroit goes the state of Michigan. It would be a mistake to brand everybody on the west side of the state as being anti-Detroit. It just isn't true. I would also point out that part of the problem that we're experiencing is this continued drumbeat that this is a Detroit bailout. The press has to help us. Detroiters played absolutely no role in this. How far back do you want to go? Blame somebody back in the 90s and 2003. The state has had control for 7 straight years. They have made all the decisions, and the misinformation that somehow the state doesn't own this problem, both morally, ethically, and I might add contractually. They have put their John Hancock on every piece of debt. And so when you hear this another Detroit bailout, it makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck because it's an out and right lie. It's the state's debt. The state managed it. The state needs to fix it. And secondly, to try to have a school system operate without recognizing going forward the trajectory of spending is just, these politicians just don't want to deal with this. I'm not saying everybody has bad intentions. I don't know them personally. And I was on the phone last night all the way up to the point in time where they wouldn't talk to me anymore. And many people have legitimate views and legitimate points of view that are different than ours. But it has to be done during the daytime, not at 4:30 in the morning when half the world is sleeping.
So, and I would just say, I want to affirm John's point. This is not about people across the state who do not support us. Jeff Hansen led the Senate package, and he is on the west side of the state. And it was a bipartisan package where there were both Republicans and Democrats in this. This package is really about it being a partisan package where the politician basically wanted to bully the Republicans into voting for this in the middle of the night. I got news for you. You can bully them, but you cannot bully Detroit.
I'll give you your follow-up, but your question touched a nerve. Every co-chair has tapped me on the shoulder and want to address it, so Angie.
I apologize, but we have to leave because there's some kids at Cass Tech that are getting full-ride scholarships, and it happens right now.
Okay.
Make sure that they come.
Angie Reyes is still going to address your question.
To tie these two stories together, the quality of the students and the education.
I wish I could get them in the same show, David, but one will be at 4 and one will be at 5. And it'll have to be an implied connection, okay?
Thank you. Angie?
I also want to be really clear that a lot of what happened in the House last night was driven by the private, for-profit charter lobby talking about that the Senate bills would limit choice and limit the number of charters in the city of Detroit. We have more charter schools in the city of Detroit than any other city in the United States. How in the hell are we limiting that? What we want is to limit bad schools. We want quality choice. We don't want every lousy school educating our children. We want to have a say in the quality of the schools that come into our city and that educate our children. Not every private, for-profit, secret entity should be allowed to come into our city whenever and wherever and do any kind of half-assed job trying to educate our children who end up in the school-to-prison pipeline, which is another private for-profit.
Thank you, Angie. I wouldn't say, but the term ass is in the Bible. So, but Guy did leave. But when he talked about Britain, in case you all forgot, we built bridges. That's why we awarded just this past Sunday the NAACP's Freedom and Justice Award to the Republican senator from the western part of the state, Jeff Hansen, for the work on this very issue. So, if that's not building the bridge, I don't know what is.
So we're up against it. We're going to wrap up in 5 minutes. Any other questions from the media before we turn to final quick comments from co-chairs and a couple of other parents in the audience? Any other media questions? So Charlonda or Watrius, I wonder if you want to just make quick comments before we turn to the co-chairs for brief final remarks.
I am Watrice Harris, and I am a parent of 2 DPS school children, and I'm going to defer my parent response right now and let Imani Harris, my daughter who wrote a letter last night, be the response. My name is Imani Harris. I am a very concerned sophomore at Renaissance High School. I am writing this letter because I am appalled. I'm appalled at the fact that there was ever a thought that already struggling teachers should work for free while our emergency manager, legislatures, etc., continue to be paid. I am appalled that teachers had to resort to striking because they were not taken seriously with just their words. I am appalled that teachers were then shamed for standing out. Is it not their First Amendment right to protest peacefully? I'm appalled that adults that have never been to nor had children in a DPS school would dare tell teachers that they are wrong while they sit at home and receive their paychecks. I'm appalled that it took 2 days of me being at home for there to be some solution. I am dumbfounded at the fact that Bills 710 and 711 were rejected and then changed to some sick version of what the Senate represented. I don't quite get why the DEC was taken out of the bill when all they want to do is help. I am disgusted at some of the things that are proposed in this quick fix. So, what are you going to do? Fire those teachers you don't like so we can lose more teachers so less people will apply to DPS schools? My next question is, why would we get rid of the unions so their rights are completely eliminated? The topic I am most heated about has to be this uncertified teacher business. Who in their right mind would think that hiring an uncertified teacher would even remotely fix the problem? You all argue that DPS test scores are too low. How would hiring an uncertified teacher increase those test scores? Everyone is so worried. Everyone is so worried about how I'm losing my education from 4 sick-out days. No one's taking into account the fact that I went almost a full semester without a real English teacher. Let's count up those days and see just how much education I missed from those months, while the powers that be took their sweet time finding a teacher that was actually willing to step foot into DPS due to the instability and lack of value of teachers by this state-run district. Let's say I went roughly 3.5 months without a teacher. That means that I had about 13 weeks with no teacher. Each school week has 5 days, so I went 65 days without a teacher. I missed 65 days without an English teacher, while we sit around and worry about the 4 measly sick-out days. In conclusion, the state of DPS is sickening. The fact that everything revolves around money and power is repulsive. The fact that someone I don't know and clearly doesn't care about me holds my education in their hands is terrifying. I feel if there is no hope. If the current House bills are voted into law, I just don't know what we would do. My future is doomed. All who read this letter, please know that there are some students who know the issues and want to help. But if our future is in the hands of politicians who care nothing about us, what can we do but sit and watch as our educations are thrown down the drain? The last thing I have to say is that we need to stand together. If you are fighting for the children, then you are fighting with everyone fighting for the children. Arguing amongst each other is what is holding us back. We are all in this with each other, and if that's the case, then we need to continue working together and truly be united and not divided.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I hesitate to do this, but I'm confident it can be done. I'm going to ask the co-chairs to give 15-second closing remarks, starting with John Ricolta.
I'm going to say 5 seconds. Don't give up.
We're gonna win.
Sí se puede.
We stick together, we're united, we're going to make this happen.
We didn't come this far to turn back now, and if it comes to the governor, governor, veto.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. The co-chairs will stick around if there are further media questions. You know how to reach us. We appreciate your interest in this vital issue, and stay tuned. Thank you.